The hero shooter is a very popular genre of multiplayer games, and if you think about it for long enough, you'll probably come to the conclusion that this type of game has always been where the multiplayer industry was heading. Hero shooters allow you to take the spotlight in ways that Call of Duty can't measure up to, because it's not just about shooting, it's about knowing and utilizing your character's abilities to the maximum effect. And in these types of games, doing so usually ends up being very flashy and makes you look very cool. And because of this, people love the genre. Overwatch, Valorant, Apex Legends, all these shooters have seen huge success since their debut. They've seen years upon years of high player counts and even higher profits, but all is not well.
We are pleased to announce Hero Shooter number 500.
At the time of writing, very recently, a new hero shooter called Concord was announced to the world, and in response, the world collectively rolled their eyes. And while it is true that the game looks incredibly generic, it has sparked a discussion that I believe is a little less open and shut than people are saying. See, the words on everyone's lips at the moment is hero shooter fatigue. We've gotten to the point where a new game for such a unique genre is announced, and people want nothing to do with it.
I can't stand hero shooters. I hate them!
It seems clear. People are tired of hero shooters now, right? Well, I'm not sold on the idea, and today we'll be diving into what's really going on here. We'll talk about the failures of the industry, the failures of the genre, and we'll also be talking about the possible future it has in store for us. Today we'll be talking about how hero shooter fatigue isn't real.
Hi everyone, this is Jeff with the Overwatch team.
Concord is a 5v5 first-person shooter.
Honestly, we've let you down when it comes to delivering Overwatch content.
Now, if we're going to truly talk about this genre and understand its little midlife crisis, we need to go back to a time when it didn't exist at all. We need to go back to its origins and explore the past and how it became what it is today. We need to go back to the early 2000s/1999. Now you might be wondering, what are we doing in this era of gaming history? What's so important about this time period? Well, around this point, the grandfather of the hero shooter was becoming a little bit popular. A genre was popping up called the class shooter. Because when you really start to think about it, hero shooters are obviously just heavily mutated class shooters, like for example, Battlefield or Team Fortress Classic. In Battlefield, you could be a specific military unit that would play a role in keeping your team's war machine well oiled. This could be scout, assault, anti-tank, medic, or engineer, and as expected, each one came with the tools to do their job. Scout had a great kit for getting the lay of the battlefield and a sniper rifle to help lock it down. The medic could heal himself and other teammates, but had a pretty low-powered SMG. And the engineer pretty much just had the ability to keep vehicles and other stationary weapons operational. Everyone had a role to play other than just shoot people. That was the assault class's job. And this kind of symbiosis made team play much more engaging than many other shooters out there. Because back then, multiplayer games were pretty much just shooting no matter which way you looked at it. In Half-Life Deathmatch, the most help you'd get from a buddy is if he helped you shoot a guy. Games like Team Fortress Classic and Battlefield changed that by making teamwork not just a novelty, but a necessity. It was obviously the way to go with multiplayer games, and these days, you might not notice it. It might not even be marketed or mentioned as one, but many games allow you to choose a role or turn yourself into a role. Overall, these games were super important for the evolution of team-based multiplayer experiences, but for FPS games at least, it wasn't until 2007 that the seeds for hero shooters were truly planted with the release of Team Fortress 2.
What are you, president of his fan club?
No.
That would be your mother.
TF2 was very unique at the time because while the rest of the industry was going off chasing what Battlefield had done with classes, Valve instead looked at their own work with Team Fortress Classic in order to create the sequel. The way they did this was by taking the classes of the first game and making that feature the foundation they built off. It wasn't just use your team to win the fight anymore, you had team-based objectives. The story was literally about two teams in an endless war, and the classes themselves were transformed from an industry standard random guy whose job is his class to each class actually being a dedicated character. It seems normal now because it's been around so long, but it was pretty new back then. Each character had their own strong personality that matched their playstyle. Engineer was a laid-back Texan inventor with a penchant for sticking as many guns on his machines as possible. Spy was a professional saboteur who took himself way too seriously and looked down on the rest of the team. Medic was a mad German scientist who only worked as a mercenary to fund his unethical medical experiments. And this was all well and good, but the magic really flowed from how this all came together in a match. Because none of that character stuff was actually important to the gameplay, but the gameplay couldn't help but bring it in. Like during a match, you'll have an engineer lazing around while his sentry does all the work. A heavy yells at the top of his lungs and blasts away on his minigun. A spy curses out the sniper after having a jar of piss thrown at him. All that character building in the background might not have mattered, but it actually enriched the gameplay. It was like you jumped into a scene from one of their animated shorts. It was one of the first games to meet online multiplayer with narrative, all while never shoving it in your face, and that's part of the reason the game became so big and is still loved by many till this day. But what does this nice little walk down memory lane have to do with hero shooters? Well, Team Fortress 2 is widely regarded as being the father of the hero shooter genre, and despite not really having all the little bells and whistles you expect out of a hero shooter nowadays, it still struck a chord with people. Having a class with their own personality, weapons, and uses really clicked with a lot of people, and other companies began toying with the idea of taking that one step further. The question then became, can we just do away with all the classes but keep everything else? And yeah, it was a good question because it opened up so many possibilities. Each character could now be their own role instead of just being a personality slotted into a usual team composition. And you already know what the answer to this question was, because in 2016, the first modern day hero shooter was released, and it was called Battleborn?
What?
Yeah, fun fact, Battleborn was the first ever game to coin the term hero shooter, and to those of you who have never heard of it, I'm not surprised. From what I remember, around the time that this game was coming out, I wasn't interested in playing it at all, and this was mostly because I couldn't really figure out what the game was about. And honestly, that's still true now, because for this video, I went on the Wikipedia for the game, and I still have no clue what it's about after reading the description. Battleborn is a hero shooter with elements of multiplayer online battle arenas. Players select one of several pre-designed characters with different attacks and skills, and participate in either single-player, cooperative matches, or competitive matches with other players. Okay, what's the game about though? But look, if we're being honest, the real reason none of us really remember Battleborn is because of a certain other hero shooter that released around the same time. And you know, it was just a little game, a small experience called... Now, Overwatch is the hero shooter. It's not some proto-hero shooter like TF2. It's not some undecipherable piece of lost media like Battleborn. No, Overwatch was easy. You had characters, each with their own abilities, stories, and distinctive looks. And these characters were dropped into teams of 6 who would fight another team of 6. And bang, it was simple. It was easy. The nail had been hit on the head and people were fucking loving it, man. Like, if you were on the internet in 2016, Overwatch was everywhere. Everyone was playing it. Everyone was staring at Tracer's ass. Everyone was really excited because this was a new future for FPS games, and I missed it, to be honest. Yeah, I was one of those little basement-dwelling losers that hated the game, rocking back and forth with my Balloonicorn plushie, cursing Overwatch for trying to be like my precious Team Fortress 2. But hey, it's fine that I wasn't around for the original Overwatch because we are running a little longer on this history lesson than I would have liked, and we still haven't touched on the question that we're asking ourselves 8 years later, which is, are we sick of hero shooters? So now we've arrived back in modern day, and I just wanted to reassure you that that little trip we took into the past was absolutely necessary, because I wanted to highlight the years of building upon success that got us to the masterpiece that was Overwatch 1. Because things in the gaming landscape do change, but it's pretty rare to capture lightning in a bottle only for that lightning to seemingly fizzle out, which is why I'm not totally convinced that people are sick of these games. I think they are sick of a certain type of these games, and just like we can look at TF2 to see how Overwatch evolved some of its best concepts, we can look at the community's problems with hero shooters these days and work our way backwards to the culprit. And this one is pretty easy. The biggest complaint you will see about hero shooters is that they are all way too similar, and this single stance lets us automatically find the problem. Because the issue isn't Valorant, it isn't Apex Legends, it's not XDefiant, it's not Marvel Rivals, it's Overwatch 2. And how do we know this? Well, Valorant is pretty much Counter-Strike but with Overwatch features. Apex Legends is Fortnite or PUBG but with Overwatch features. XDefiant is Call of Duty but with Overwatch features. Marvel Rivals is going to be very similar to Overwatch but with Marvel characters. And yes, I know I just pissed a lot of you off, and if it makes you feel better, let me know all about it in the comments section. But what I'm saying is true. Overwatch is the template for all hero shooters in modern day. And if people are so dissatisfied and annoyed when they get more from this template, then what exactly is wrong with the source? That's the question. What is wrong with Overwatch 2? And the answer is absolutely not as straightforward as it may seem. Because talking to some people I know, everyone seems to have a different issue with the game, which is why I can only base this off my personal experience. So I hereby welcome you to top 2 things Brandos doesn't like about Overwatch 2. Now, coming in at number 2 is the constant over-tweaking of the game. When I first started playing, I really enjoyed the experience, but there were a couple of times when you would feel like a character was being picked more than others in matches, and this character would do some insane, disproportionate damage compared to what I could do. It was pretty annoying that it seemed like there were some 1v1s that you simply could not win, which in a first-person shooter is a bit of a problem for me. I think that in games with as many variables as Overwatch has, there also needs to be room for the unexpected and uncalculated. In Counter-Strike, that null zone that Valve has not calculated is the aim of the player. If you are quicker or more precise, then it doesn't matter what guns your enemy has or what armor he's wearing, you've won the null zone, and no amount of calculated game guarantees that your enemy has, like weapon damage or damage reduction from his armor, are gonna save him. In Overwatch 2, this isn't really much of a thing. The null zone, where a player's skill takes over from the calculated and programmed game mechanics, is extremely tiny because the game is extremely overtuned. When the game first launched, sure, there were some balance issues, but through the last few years of Overwatch, the devs have attempted to create an answer for every single problem, every single scenario, every single 1v1, every single engagement. This leads the game to feel almost like a stage play or a choreographed dance. Everyone is picking the characters that will win against the other team's characters. The tanks are going at it, the supports are healing the tanks, the damage are trying to kill each other. The only null zone left for a player to dominate is in damage numbers, because that's what wins fights. It's as simple as that. If your combined team doesn't do enough damage to outpace the other team's healing, you lose, plain and simple. Or to put it back into my metaphorical play terms, you didn't read the script well enough to obviously pick Reaper instead of Cassidy. It turns the experience into an absolute slog because there's no room for any surprises. If your whole team dies pushing the payload and you're the only one left, that's cool and all, but you better go and regroup with your buddies, because this is not the kind of game where you can be a one-man show, despite features like play of the game implying that it is. I understand that this game is a team game, but the mechanics of said game should not bar individual players from pulling off some crazy stunts. You shouldn't get into a 1v1 and think to yourself, oh damn, this guy's playing Soldier 76 and I'm playing Echo, I guess it's over for me. And look, I really hate doing this because it feels like it's 2016 again, but I'm gonna compare it to TF2. Because in TF2, you can get into those situations where you know you're donezo, like if you're a spy and a pyro catches a whiff of your cigarette smoke. But that's the risk you take, because you know that if you get behind the team's front line, you can pop off. A spy can kill an entire team, a sniper can kill an entire team, a sneaky engineer can kill an entire team. Is the game designed for that? Did Valve expect players to be making these moves every match? No, but that's the null zone I've been talking about. Each character has the potential to win a match for their team based on the player's skill. Overwatch doesn't have this. You either play along with how the game has been meticulously mashed together, or you lose. And the worst part is that it wasn't always like this. A fact that leads me into my next complaint, which is Overwatch 2 does not care about its players. Now, this is starting to become ancient history at this point, but one of the reasons that my first complaint is such a big deal to me is that I know the devs aren't this fucking stupid. Overwatch 2 is overtuned beyond belief because they're trying to make a new game out of systems that were created for a very, very different game, which was called Overwatch 1. And yes, I know I never played Overwatch 1, but it's clear to even me that Blizzard is like a kid at a daycare trying to shove a red block into a triangle-shaped hole. That is to say that every single character was not made to work in this current system. And I don't even need to go into depth on this, because I can just say this one little fact. Overwatch 1 was 6v6, Overwatch 2 is 5v5. That is one less tank on the battlefield in the sequel. And while it doesn't sound like a big deal, it really is. Every single character in the OG Overwatch was designed with the idea that there could be multiple tanks, DPSs, or supports running around. That was the null zone, that area of uncertainty. And when they updated it to lock the team composition to 2 tanks, 2 DPS, and 2 supports, it was still relatively fine, because these characters were designed with 6-player teams in mind. But removing that extra player in the sequel changes everything. The tank now has to take the brunt of the damage, which really messes shit up, since not all tanks were designed to be a big meat shield. But what does this have to do with Blizzard not caring about their players? Well, it's easy. They had a system that they had worked on and evolved for years with Overwatch 1. People paid cold hard cash to get in on the fun, and when they went to launch Overwatch 2, they shut down Overwatch 1. And now everyone who played the first game must participate in this experimental new match composition. So yeah, it sucks that Overwatch 2's gameplay isn't great, but guess what? There's also no going back. But don't worry everyone, Overwatch 2 really does need to exist, because they're adding a story mode, you know, an actual dedicated campaign for all those who got into the game because of the characters and the promise of these heroes coming out of retirement to save the world once again. Overwatch 2 deserves to exist because the story they're gonna tell is just way too big to just be a little DLC for the first game. That's the attitude Blizzard had with the community for the launch of Overwatch 2. They justified it by dangling that story like a carrot on a stick, but they also launched the game without the campaign, since they were apparently still working on it, even though it had been in development for a few years. But anyways, Overwatch launched, and it was like Overwatch 1, but slightly worse and monetized to all hell. And there was even a bit of a joke back then that this wasn't a sequel, but instead a shop update for Overwatch 1, where they added excessive monetization to the game. And yeah, that was pretty crap. With everything I've talked about, Overwatch 2 was not in the best state, but it was excusable because their real focus was on the campaign. Just wait for the campaign, it'll all be okay. It'll be here soon, it'll all be alright. In the end, it'll be worth it. And so we waited and waited and waited, and eventually I got so annoyed from waiting that it drove me to make my first ever YouTube video, where an entire section of the video was dedicated to talking about the state of Overwatch 2. But he also acknowledged that the team is still finalizing how the campaign will be rolled out. That's code for we haven't figured out how to squeeze the most money out of this thing yet. Like in this article, they talk about how it was such a hard decision on whether they were going to release the campaign all in one go or in pieces, like they were ever going to make the consumer-friendly choice. Oh, and would you look at that, they didn't make the consumer-friendly choice. This is my honest reaction. But hey everybody, Blizzard eventually did release some PvE, but they didn't include the skill trees or the character progression that was advertised when the game was revealed. And they were, okay. I don't know what I was expecting, dude, but it was disappointing, I'll tell you that. For how long we waited for the missions and for how much story was built up, I felt like there were a couple layers of character depth missing from cutscenes, but look, I was just happy that they released them. However, in the background, Blizzard was crunching some numbers numbers, and they found that they had simply not made enough money off these PvE missions to continue making them, so they cancelled them. And I don't want to skim over this. I want to put this into perspective, because I don't really see a lot of people really talk about what a heinously dirty move Blizzard made here. And yes, welcome to my actual proper point about Overwatch 2. Sorry for the rambling. Pretty much, Overwatch was released. Big hit, but the price of entry put some players off. Many players bought into not only the gameplay, but also the world of Overwatch, as well as its future. Some time goes by and Overwatch 2 is revealed. This will be a fresh start for the game. It'll be free to play, which equals more players, and we'll get that story we've been wanting. The trade-off is that Overwatch 1 has got to go. Overwatch 2 then launches without a campaign, and it is over a year before we get anything. What we do end up getting is 3 missions that lack the features that were advertised on reveal. Blizzard also doesn't make enough money off of them and decides to can the entire thing. Now, those right there are the facts. That's what happened with this game. But do you actually see what happened here? In order to increase profits, Blizzard prioritized the release of Overwatch 2, but only to make the IP more profitable. They used the campaign as a major selling point and justification for the game, but then they just abandoned it when it didn't make them enough money. But the truth is that this is what they always wanted. Look at Overwatch at the moment. It's an executive's dream. It's hyper monetized, it's popular, and they've even squirmed their way out of actually creating content that they used to market the game. At the current time, Overwatch 2, and by extension Blizzard, has no promises to uphold to the player base. There is no story coming. There will be no significant efforts to fix their overtuned game, and people are okay with that. Blizzard served you a shit sandwich, spat in your face, and said, come back next time for a real burger. And when you come back next time, they did the same thing again, but said this time that a real burger will cost too much money to make, and just be grateful for what you have. Now finally, let's get down to the actual point of the video. What does everything I've talked about today have to do with hero shooter fatigue? Well, it's this. You're not tired of hero shooters. You're tired of Blizzard type hero shooters. It's hard to see from the inside, but with this move, Blizzard has posted a massive neon sign above the genre saying, free money. They've shown every money-hungry executive and their dog that all you need to make shitloads of cash is have a game with a couple of quirky characters with cool abilities, with a battle pass slapped on top, and a story that you never have to write a climax to. That's what this fatigue truly is. It's a community of people who are tired of being exploited. I mean, just go and watch the Concord trailer and try to do it without bias, but watch through it and wait for your character to come up. And what I mean by that is that if a certain voice line seems to line up with your sense of humor, or you think that one of the characters looks cool, they've got you. And booting into the game, there might just happen to be a cosmetic that seems to scratch a particular itch for you. That's what you are truly tired of. You're sick of games that are pretty much begging for your money while offering nothing but some cosmetics that have been focus tested to appeal to the type of person that you are. This stuff used to be a bonus. Let's use Team Fortress 2 for example. I know, but it's a good example because this game in its heyday was awesome. The gameplay itself was enough to keep playing, but you also got free weapon drops and even sometimes hats for your characters. I used to log on and play on Thursday nights just because I knew that I'd get some new weapons just for doing so, and I never felt like I needed cosmetics to have fun. In TF2, many cosmetics are suited to the character you put them on or add to the cartoonish comedy of the world, like say the big steel jaw of Summer Fun, where it's implied that the team were fooling around when they accidentally bolted this piece of metal to the Heavy's head. I can't recall any cosmetics that were ever made to appeal to a certain audience, unlike in Overwatch, where Blizzard knew the kawaii crowd would just go wild for D.Va in a schoolgirl outfit, which honestly, have you ever taken a step back and just thought about how fucking weird that is? Like, isn't it crazy that there's actually people who look at D.Va in a schoolgirl outfit and go like, Look, in short, what you're really sick of is not hero shooters. You're sick of money makers dressed up as hero shooters. Because for professional game dev studios, these games are fucking easy to make. All you need is some characters, some maps, a battle pass, and boom, maintain that for a couple years and count the green. There's no obligation to ever do anything other than release your seasonal battle pass, and people are so used to being disappointed by these games that they'll just take it lying down. It really is ironic, because as we discussed earlier, hero shooters are built off the back of years of innovation. It's only through innovation that we got a genre as cool as this, and yet for some reason, the industry seems to believe they've found the golden formula that will never stop being successful. But what we're seeing and what they fail to see is the fuse that's just been lit. And this fuse leads to a big old bomb that's gonna go off soon called the next best thing. See, Overwatch is king. It has been for a while, but they have become comfortable enough to fuck over its player base repeatedly and know it'll be fine. But there will be a day that something better comes along. Someone will innovate the formula, make something more interesting. It doesn't matter, it can be anything at this point, but people are ready to jump ship. Once again, look at Concord. That's a hard pass from me because I know what it is and I'm not interested. Me and a ton of others judging by the like to dislike ratio on their reveal trailer. At this point, you can pretty much smell the Overwatch formula, and it is stagnant. And that's why hero shooter fatigue isn't real. Deep down, I believe that many of you don't want hero shooters to stop being made. You want better hero shooters to be made. You want a company to make something that isn't just looking to raid your wallet. And overall, that's the funniest part about this. All these companies keep flocking to the genre to release a shit game and make tons of money, and not a single one of them realize that this is a community just waiting for something better to come along. And so whoever comes along and makes that next better game, whoever decides that their fan base is something to respect and listen to, whoever makes that next innovation in a genre defined by innovation is gonna make more money than any of these parasites could ever dream of making.